Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to continue on just as we always have with these YouTube videos. Just do some screen recordings with you, and you can take your notes. And I'll keep them brief. They're not going to be 50 minutes long. So just follow along on Schoology just like you normally have. I designed the class to sustain going remote again after having gone through what we went through last spring. So we're going to get through this, and it's going to be fun, and everything's going to work out great. We're going to continue to learn and have fun while we do it. All right, so I'll go ahead and get our PowerPoint going. You can open your notes up, and we will pick up where we left off last time. We were talking about Marbury versus Madison, and with Marbury versus Madison, we mentioned that it was one of the most important Supreme Court cases in really history because it establishes the authority of the Supreme Court to determine if a law made by the legislative branch is constitutional or unconstitutional. So, the case of William Marbury against James Madison is not, it's kind of an afterthought when you compare it to the implications of establishing judicial review, which is the ability of the court to determine the constitutionality of something. Okay, so as we continue on talking about Thomas Jefferson's presidency, one of Jefferson's first actions as president was to reduce the size of our military. He was a Democratic Republican, and he was fearful of large standing armies, and he wanted to use diplomacy as opposed to kind of like a peaceful coercion instead of carrying a big stick and being threatening. So he also he thought that large standing armies were invitations to dictatorship. So, but he definitely wanted a smaller army, but he was not opposed to having a larger navy. Navies were less fearful because the navies do not march inland and endanger liberties, according to farm-loving Jeffersonians. So Thomas Jefferson decides that he wanted to build up the United States Navy, and he's not a lot. He wanted to have like 2,000 boats. So during this time, however, there is a threat to American shipping, and that threat came from pirates. All right, literally like pirates, and these pirates are from the North African Barbary coast. Okay, so they had made a national industry out of blackmailing and plundering merchant ships. They're pirates. So Thomas Jefferson, the pacifist, the guy who wants no foreign entanglements whatsoever. He, as we mentioned earlier, he's the president who is consistently inconsistent. And so during the time when these pirates were blackmailing and plundering, Jefferson has to react. And when the Pasha of Tripoli, which is on the coast, the Barbary coast of North Africa, informally declares war on the United States, this basically throws the gauntlet down right square in the face of Thomas Jefferson. And he's a non-interventionist, a pacifist, critic of having a large military, and essentially we go to war with these Barbary pirates for several years. Eventually, this informal war comes to an end after a lot of naval battles in 1805, and we sign a treaty with them for $60,000, which is essentially just paying ransom money for captured Americans. But the small gunboats that Thomas Jefferson's newly built navy used, with some success, fascinated Thomas Jefferson, and so he advocated a large number of them to be built in certain inland parts of the United States, where it would create jobs, especially amongst people who he wanted to get votes from. So it was a very political move. And about 200 of those tiny little gunboats, or they called them Jeffs, named after Thomas Jefferson. They called them Jeffs, or the Mosquito Fleet, because they were just tiny little gunboats. and they were being built in places like Savannah, Georgia. And then one day, during a hurricane arrived, one of those gunboats, due to the flooding, was flooded about 8 miles inland in a cornfield. And so, that's through no fault of Jefferson. It's a natural disaster. But the Federalists, Thomas Jefferson's opponents, they would toast that Thomas Jefferson had built the greatest navy on land, because one of his gunboats had flooded inland 8 miles. So, just kind of, poking fun at him. All right. To continue on with our theme of Jefferson being consistently inconsistent, let's talk about the Louisiana Purchase. Okay. Now, before we purchase anything, we have to, have a little context for this purchase. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte is that gentleman there on the left, and he basically went to the King of Spain and acquired a significant portion of the land that we would buy from him from Spain. And so, Napoleon essentially threatened him into giving him that land. But there were rumors going around that the Spanish would, because we had an agreement with Spain that gave us access to the Mississippi River and access to the port of New Orleans and their warehouses there where we could store our food that we had grown in the heartland of America and ship it out to the Sugar Islands and wherever it needed to go. But when rumors began to go around that when France took control of all of that from Spain, that it was going to be very threatening to Americans who had made a living using the river for shipping and moving their goods and whatever. So once again, Thomas Jefferson's thrown right in the middle of this foreign entanglement with, he's a pacifist, he's anti-entanglement, and once again, he's kind of in the hot seat. So, America was in a unique position. We have to deal with this new emperor, self-proclaimed emperor of France, Napoleon, who's without a doubt a military genius, the preeminent military genius of his age, and getting involved with him could spell, foreshadow a very dark and blood-drenched future. So the United States, Thomas Jefferson wants to try to solve this peacefully. So Thomas Jefferson, in 1803, sent James Monroe to Paris to meet with our standing regular minister to France, Robert Livingston, and with very specific instructions. They were given instructions specific from Thomas Jefferson that said, look, we want to be able to maintain the city of New Orleans and access to the port. And so you are authorized to spend a maximum of $10 million for the city of New Orleans and get as much land to the east of it as you can for $10 million. And that was very specific. Okay. Now, obviously, we know now that that's not what happened. That's not what we purchased for. So when they arrive, that they meet with Napoleon, and at this critical juncture, Napoleon just kind of up and decides that he's going to sell all of his Louisiana territory. So why on earth would Napoleon want to get rid of such a vast tract of land that he had just recently taken from the Spanish? So why would he abandon his dream of having a new world empire? Well, there's a few reasons for that. First, as you can see this gentleman here in the middle, his name is Toussaint Louverture. Now, I'm not the greatest at pronouncing French, but Toussaint Louverture. Now, I'm going to tell you about this guy. He was a former slave, and he lived in the island of Santo Domingo, which is the present-day Dominican Republic. So called San Domingue, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. It's the same place, okay? Now, he was a slave there, and he led a slave rebellion in 1791, which was successful, and he basically was able to overthrow the French forces there that were maintaining the island, and got rid of them, forced them out. And then when France abolishes slavery, he switched his allegiance to France. And this was all during, like the French Revolution, the overthrowing of the king and queen of France. But then when Napoleon takes over, Napoleon, all the while, this guy right here, he's like acting as the royal governor of the entire island. Okay, like he's the man in charge, this former slave. And then when Napoleon sent men to Santo Domingo, there was basically a war that fought out, and the people that lived there were had a greater resistance to the virulent diseases which existed there, things like yellow fever, malaria. And when Napoleon sends his troops there, they were, kind of not, they fell ill very easily and very quickly. So another reason, so he was unsuccessful in reclaiming this, okay? Now, because he's unsuccessful in reclaiming this is a sugar island. This is what they grow here. They're not growing wheat and corn, okay? They're growing sugar. Sugar was a profitable, that's the cash crop that they grew there. None of the land here was used for growing crops. So where did the people who lived here get the food that they needed to survive? Well, they got it from the heartland of the continental United States, places like Missouri and Iowa and Illinois and Tennessee, Mississippi, all those places along the Mississippi River. And if Napoleon no longer has control of this island, he no longer needs to feed the people there and have access to things that are, like the food that's being grown along the Mississippi River. So that's another, that's one of the reasons why he kind of abandons his New World ideas. All right. Another reason is that Napoleon is getting ready to end the lull in a war that he had been waging against the British. Okay, the British controlled the seas; they had the most powerful navy in the world, and he feared that he might be forced to abandon his dreams of a New World Empire anyway, in order to just be successful against this war with the British, and he wanted to have allies instead of enemies, and he wanted to make nice with America because being enemies with America could drive America right into the arms of his sworn enemy, the British. So he decided to sell the huge wilderness to the Americans and use the money that he's going to get from the purchase to fund his schemes in Europe, his schemes nearer to home. So Napoleon hoped that the United States would be strengthened by Louisiana and would one day be a strong military and naval power that could help him to thwart the British. So it makes a lot of sense. But needless to say, when out of clear blue sky, when James Monroe and Robert Livingston say, we got $10 million and we're allowed to buy the city about the size of the dot here on the map, and as much land to the east of it, which you can see I'm kind of circling, that's all they were allowed to purchase. And when Napoleon, just kind of out of the blue, says, hey, I want to sell all of this. You interested? And so it was kind of a shock to them. So Livingston and James Monroe nervously entered on the negotiations with them. And remember, they were given specific instructions, $10 million, the city of New Orleans and as much land east as you can. By the end of the negotiations, they had pledged $15 million for New Orleans, plus all this land in green. So an immense tract of land, immense. So in essence, they bought all this wilderness just to get a city, just to get the city of New Orleans. So once again, puts Thomas Jefferson in a predicament. He's consistently inconsistent. Thomas Jefferson, the theorist and strict constitutionalist, If it's not directly in the Constitution, we can't do it. And he loved the Constitution. It was beloved to him. And he did not know where in the Constitution the president was authorized to negotiate treaties to literally double the size of the United States. He doubles the size. So, plus this land is not uninhabited. It contains Indians, French people, Spanish people, even fleed slaves from the South are living in places like Arkansas and Oklahoma. So it's full of it has people there. So the conscience-stricken Thomas Jefferson privately proposed that a constitutional amendment be passed. He's like, "Hey, let's make this, put it in the Constitution so that I don't have to feel so bad." Well, it's really tough to make a constitutional amendment. So Thomas Jefferson goes before Congress, kind of hat in hand, head down, because he knows in his heart he's done something unconstitutional. And imagine what would happen if Congress would have said, "Sorry, Tom, we're not allowed to purchase this." Imagine Napoleon's reaction. Dictators don't like to be told no. So, but fortunately, the Congress was not really disposed to split hairs when it came to the Constitution, especially in probably the most magnificent real estate bargain in history, where we get 828,000 square miles of land at the cost of about 3 cents an acre. 3 cents an acre. Not bad. Okay? So Thomas Jefferson, even though he feels in his heart of hearts that he's done something wrong and unconstitutional, Congress did not see it that way because there were so many land-hungry Americans, people constantly wanting to continue to move westward and expand, and especially this area here this is like the breadbasket of America today. It's some of the most fertile land on earth. It's good for growing, corn and wheat and the things that our staple crops. All right, so overnight, Thomas Jefferson avoided a possible war with France, avoided us getting entangled with England, purchased some of the richest river valley in the world, and it definitely acquiring this lays the foundations for a future major global power in being the United States. Okay, so next time I'll go ahead and stop there. Next time we'll talk about what Thomas Jefferson wants to do with this land. It talks about he sends some people out to go check it out in the form of Lewis and Clark, and we'll do some Aaron Burr conspiracies, and we'll kind of finish up Thomas Jefferson's presidency. So remember, if you have questions, if you need to talk to me for anything, you can always reach me on Schoology. I do office hours twice a day. In the morning, it's 8:20 to 8:50, and in the afternoon, it's 12:05 to 12:35. If you look on your calendar on your iPad, I've invited you to Teams meetings. You're more than welcome to join. I'll have my computer on. I may be moving around my classroom, but just speak up and ask your question. I'll be here. It's just me, just kind of sitting in my classroom talking to myself. So if you need me, I'm here for you. You guys are my first priority, and like I say, we're gonna do all right. We're gonna get through this, and you can count on me to help you out in any way that I can. So, like I said, if you need me, I have this. You can look on Schoology of when my office hours are. Plus, I've invited you to the Teams, and it should be in your calendar. And you can just go open Teams and go to calendar, and it'll tell you. You can just pop right on the meeting anytime you want, coming and going. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great day, and as always, if you need me, don't hesitate to get in contact with me. So, talk to you later. Have a good one.